All right. Hey there, everybody. How's it going? I'm Dan Haggerty. This is The Story, and here's to another week of taking it one day at a time. To all of you who are joining us now after spending all of your time inside, thank you for doing what you have to do. For those of you in those industries considered essential, especially anybody working in anything remotely close to healthcare, thank you. Thank you very much for all the work that you're doing right now. I know a lot of you might be checking us out for the very first time. Your schedules are way off. You're sitting in front of the TV at 6 o'clock for the first time probably in a long time. So we want to give you an idea of how things work here at The Story. We want you to talk to us, all right? Ask us questions. We do our best to make you part of The Story. We want you to use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com or just hit me up on Facebook. Really, anything works as long as you stay that safe 6 feet away, because as of now, in both Oregon and Washington, it's no longer optional to practice social distancing. That is staying that safe distance apart from each other to prevent the spread of COVID-19. It is now the law in both states. Now, on Friday, Governor Brown tried that pretty please approach, stay inside except for the essentials like grocery shopping or medical trips. But a Story viewer named Liz asked on Twitter, "Hey, Dan, I hear that there were mobs of people at the Oregon coast this weekend. Is that true?" Well, Liz, yeah, it was. See for yourself. A lot of people either didn't get the governor's stay-at-home memo or they flat out ignored it. That's why we saw the lines of cars headed out to the coast. That's why we saw crowds of people at the parks across the state. So because so many people didn't take that stay-home request seriously today, Governors Brown and Inslee signed orders requiring it. Let's break these down, tell you what they mean. We're going to start in Oregon. Here's what you can no longer do under Executive Order 2012. Any non-essential gathering, so no matter the size of the group, going to any closed businesses, getting within 6 feet of anybody who isn't a part of your immediate household, and any kind of outdoor activity where it's impossible to keep that safe distance. It is now illegal to do these things. It's not a suggestion anymore. And brace yourself for this wall of text right here, but the order also demands that all of these types of businesses shut their doors because the governor thinks it's just too hard to avoid that personal contact in close quarters. Everything from arcades to barbershops to hookah bars to spas to nail salons to tattoo parlors and yoga studios. Obviously, there is a whole lot more on there than I even have time to mention, but there is an entire paragraph on child care facilities. In order to stay open, they have to follow the rules you see on your screen. There can only be groups of 10 children at a time. They must always be the same 10 kids, no mixing and matching in groups. They can also only meet in classrooms that no other kids have access to. They also must prioritize the children of first responders, emergency workers, and healthcare professionals. If a facility doesn't meet those rules, they have to stay closed with the rest of Oregon's schools until April 28th. Businesses that can stay open, they have to work remotely as much as they possibly can. If it's impossible for them to work remotely, they have to practice that social distancing in the office. If they don't, they will be shut down. Governor Brown tried to explain why she waited all weekend before making this order official.
I wanted to make sure that we had an executive order that worked for all of Oregon. That we could ensure that Oregonians in very rural communities of the state like Adel and Ontario could comply, as well as folks in metropolitan areas. We worked with public health officials and with the Oregon Hospitals Association to craft this order. I obviously had the input of, frankly, local elected officials from all over the state. The reality is that governors all over the nation are wrestling with how to do this.
Now, we heard how Washington plans to do it, and it's very similar to what we're seeing here. Governor Inslee making a nearly identical order just about a half an hour ago. It's very similar to Oregon's. You can still go outside for essentials, things like that, but it is now a legal order.
We expect everyone in our state to comply with these orders voluntarily. For a simple fact, it's because everyone knows that all of our loved ones are at risk here. But make no mistake, this order is enforceable by law and can be enforced.
All right, you've heard the orders. You've heard what sounds kind of like a threat, right? By law. Big question now is, are these new measures even going to work? Kyla Boshi wanted to know too.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Oregon Governor Kate Brown took the drastic step of issuing a stay-home order. By law, the order restricts where people can go and what businesses can stay open in hopes of reducing the spread of the coronavirus outbreak. But the question is, will these strict guidelines work?
The governor's order is really a godsend, but it's a little late. It should have happened last week.
The governor faced increasing pressure to act after a busy weekend at the Oregon coast, where overwhelming crowds defied her request to stay home. Tillamook Mayor Suzanne Weber hopes the public will respond now that the governor's tone has changed.
She has not said, you must do this and do it now. And that's what she needed to do. And this is not something to be wishy-washy about.
Unlike previous warnings, Oregon's stay-home order has consequences. People violating the order could face jail time or fines.
It may make them feel more fear and perceive more risk in their environment, and as a result, they may be more likely to stay indoors and to socially distance themselves from others, which is
Ellen Peters from the University of Oregon explains, if other people are following the rules, you will too. It's human nature.
If it actually becomes a social norm, if more people are doing it, if even most people are doing it, then that will also end up changing even more behaviors. Because if everyone else is doing it, I'm more likely to too.
Governor Brown's order follows similar shelter-in-place measures in many other states.
The governor of California issuing a strict stay-at-home order to his state's 40 million residents.
So how is it working there? We asked investigative reporter Brandon Ritteman from our sister station in Sacramento.
If the goal is to change everybody's behavior so that we're not, in close contact with each other as much, I think it is having the desired effect to a large degree.
No state is completely preventing people from going outside, but some measures are more drastic than others. Whether the restrictions in Oregon go far enough is an open question.
Okay, Kyle Aboshi joining us now, reporting remotely today, joining us from his home. Kyle, we have one thing coming from the mayor of Portland, another thing coming from the governor, and caught in the middle, the public.
Right, and now they're on the same page, which is a good thing. And talking with experts today, they were explaining to me, listen, that conflict between the mayors, including Mayor Wheeler, and the governor really creates a lot of confusion for the general public, and that's the worst thing you can do. Is you really want one centralized basic theme being sent to the general public so they understand what's going on. If they're confused, they're in all likelihood just going to give up and not make any changes in their lifestyle.
And a lot of people have family from out of state, maybe even in a different city, and everybody kind of seems to be dealing with this differently. Do you think that weighs into it as well, that we're not on the same page, state by state, nationally?
Right. We are seeing different restrictions from state to state. Generally, the spirit of those restrictions is the same. They want social distancing, and they're doing everything they can to stop the spread of the coronavirus outbreak. But you're right. There are different loopholes, different exceptions in different states, and it is a little confusing. Local leaders are trying to be as clear as they can. Generally speaking, stay home, and that's the underlying theme.
Kyle Aboshi with the report tonight. Thank you so much. All right, so we finally have this order from the governor to stay inside, and we hope after the past few minutes of our coverage that is very clear. But over the weekend, man, it seemed like nobody knew what was going on. Governor Brown's executive order to stay inside is fairly clear. And thank goodness, because I've been confused by mixed messages since Friday. So how did we get here? On Friday, Governor Brown, Mayor Wheeler, and Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury called this late press conference, and we expected a big announcement about social distancing.
We have agreed on a plan called Stay Home, Stay Healthy, which is both an order and a public awareness campaign.
Oh, okay, it's an order. Seemed clear enough until she kept talking.
We have put in place a number of directives and a number of orders. At this point in time, I am not planning an additional statewide orders or directives.
So it's not an order. Got it. Now, if that wasn't confusing enough, Mayor Wheeler went up next and said that the non-order was actually an order.
Yes.
Kinda.
There is an order coming. We're in the process of developing the details. We're giving the public clear guidance that that order is forthcoming.
So is it an order or not? We weren't the only ones who were confused. The Willamette Week called the press conference incoherent and bizarre. The mixed messages kept piling up over the weekend. The governor tweeted at the people packing the beaches on the coast, saying, "You are endangering all Oregonians when not following social distancing orders." There's that word again, order.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
It got to the point where 25 mayors in the Portland metro area, along with 3 Metro County leaders, all pushed Governor Brown to make an actual order. Mayor Wheeler even said if the governor didn't take action, he would by himself. Which brings us to Monday morning, when Governor Brown signed Executive Order 2012, ordering us to stay home, not just asking us nicely. And that's how we got here. All right, let's talk about the big story tonight, and that's whether the Tokyo Olympics are even going to happen. You might have seen this very intense headline bouncing around the internet from USA Today. It says International Olympic Committee member says 2020 Tokyo Olympics will be postponed because of coronavirus pandemic. Now, to be clear, this is just one person's take so far, but he is a very important person. That's him. His name is Dick Pound. He's the longest serving member of the IOC, and he says the games will most likely be pushed to 2021, and the details will be worked out in the next month. He said it'll come in stages. We will postpone this and begin to deal with all the ramifications of moving this, which are immense. Now, since Mr. Pound spoke out, now the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee has jumped on board. They're also calling for the games to be delayed. And I know Oregon has a lot of local athletes wondering whether they're going to need to cancel their plane tickets to Japan. So I talked to Orlando Sanchez about them. Orlando Sanchez joining us remotely from his home right now. So, Orlando, talk to me here. The way these athletes have responded to this cannot be easy for them. A high-level athlete like this just putting things on hold for a year or more. Talk to me about what that means for them.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, Dan. They've been training for this their entire lives. This is the pinnacle of their career, what they've been waiting for, and to have to wait another year, that's super frustrating because there are athletes that are training to get to this point and want to be competing at the pinnacle, at their highest level. So very specifically within their training regimens, they're adding little by little to get there. And over the last month or two, things have just been thrown all over the place. And that's been very frustrating for them to know that it's going to be a much longer period of time before they'll get a chance to live out and fulfill that dream of theirs to compete at the Olympics. So I talked to a couple of local Olympians or aspiring Olympians today, and although it is frustrating to know that they've come this close and are so close to getting to the Olympics, ultimately, they want to be on a level playing field. They want to be able to train whenever they want to continue to have routines, and they no longer have that. So they would much prefer this in postponing them than anything else.
What about qualifying? You know, a lot of people have qualified already, but you talk about a year from now, they want to have the best of the best at that time. Do you think people are going to have to try and qualify again if they've already made it to the Olympics?
You know, I was talking with Amer Desi, who's a former Oregon State wrestler, and he just qualified for the Olympics with Canada last week. And all of these things were playing through his mind, the scenarios of will the Olympics be canceled? Will they be postponed? And he said, ultimately, my mind was just on qualifying, and we'll figure everything else out as we go. And even now, he's locked in as in, I'm an Olympian. I've made it. So regardless of what happens, I've done my best and I'm ready to go. So yeah, there's the potential of wanting to have the best team possible and the best athletes. And, you know, let's say this goes on a year and some get a little bit older and they're outside of their prime, or a younger athlete is coming along and all of a sudden they're better than they were a year. I'm sure those are all concerns that are going to affect these athletes, but for him in particular, it was like, we're going to worry about everything else as it comes, but I've qualified and I'm ready, even if it takes a year.
What else can you do at this point? Orlando Sanchez, thank you so much for your perspective. Folks at home, if you have questions about the Olympics, I know this is new and there's a lot happening day to day, go ahead and send them in to us. You can send us an email, find us on Facebook, use Twitter and the hashtag #HeyDan. Orlando, thanks. Now, I had a question specifically for Jules Boykoff today. He's been kind of our go-to Olympics guy. He's a professor at Pacific University, PhD, former pro soccer player, Olympic historian, and frequent contributor to the New York Times. His most recent installment was an opinion piece called Cancel Period, the Period, Olympics Period. Now, he thinks that the games will ultimately be postponed because of outspoken athletes, the athletes who have everything to lose, and still urged Olympic committees to act.
and that includes a number of athletes who are from right here in Oregon. Ashton Eaton, with strong Oregon ties and an Olympic superstar, suggested postponement, as did legendary high jumper Dick Fosbury of the Fosbury Flop fame. So, there's a lot of people, not just those, but all around the United States and all around the globe. Many athletes spoke out.
Now, Canada and Australia have already pulled out of the games. We will, of course, let you know if the United States joins that list. You know how for the longest time you were encouraged, even rewarded, for bringing reusable bags to the grocery store? Yeah, well, coronavirus is changing a lot of things. And if you're wondering what all this social distancing is doing to the crime rate in Portland, we found an answer at the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And we know you have a lot of questions about everything that's going on, a lot of them, and honestly, us too. We're going to have some answers for you when the story continues.
All right, now let's answer some viewer questions. This viewer says, hey Dan, can we still bring reusable bags to the grocery store? The answer depends on where you shop. Safeway is allowing you to bring reusable bags, but they ask, please bag your own groceries if you do bring your own bag. Fred Meyer and Whole Foods, they're also still allowing customers to bring bags, but I'd call before you go because both stores told me that could change soon. New Seasons is not allowing reusable bags at this time. Please keep sending in your questions. We will do our best to answer them. Just use the hashtag HeyDan. So this viewer, Jeffrey Rowley, asks, hey Dan, if I get tested and I'm negative, can I get the virus the next day? If so, do I have to be tested every day? If not, then why the big push to be tested with no symptoms? So the doctor we've been using to answer so many of your questions, she says you can get the virus any day, anytime, whether you've been tested or not. And yes, it may seem a little futile to test a few people here and there, then send them out into the public where they could easily get infected soon afterwards, but that's not the point. The issue is asymptomatic spread. We need to know how many people are out and about feeling fine and not sick at all, but passing the virus on to people around them, some of whom may become very sick or even die from the infection. Until we have reliable data on who is infected and who isn't, the only way that we have to limit the spread is to ask every single person, sick and well, to self-isolate. Please keep sending in those questions. We will do our best to answer them. Just use the hashtag HeyDan.
We got another question from Tom Mitchell on Twitter. Tom asked, hey Dan, well, all the reporting on the pandemic, we're not hearing about local crime like murders. Is the crime rate dropping or just not being reported? That's a good question. Thank you. Keep them coming. So many people staying at home right now. So does that mean that they're committing fewer crimes? We asked the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office to run the numbers for us. Now, they told us data suggests significant reductions in all reported crime categories, person, property, and society through March 15th in Multnomah County. In fact, crime rates in each category are trending below average. Calls for service also dipped below average. They also gave us jail booking data. Since the beginning of March, on average, the county has booked 66 people in jail per day. This time last year, that was closer to 80 people per day. But of course, that's an average. So let's look at the raw numbers over the past week or so, okay? You can see a lot of days when fewer than 50 people were booked. It even dropped as low as 29 people on Saturday. Compare that to this time last year when more than 100 people were booked on some days. By the way, we reached out to the Portland Police Department to try and get some crime stats from them too. They're still working on getting us those numbers. So as we get them, we'll continue to report them for you. We want to take a quick break from all this coronavirus coverage and focus on some stories that might be getting a little bit lost in the headlines about the pandemic. It's time now for In Other News. In other news, serial sex offender Jared Walter has been released from jail. He's known for cutting, gluing, or masturbating into women's hair on TriMet trains and buses. In February, he was arrested after police say he followed a Legacy Emmanuel employee into the hospital and touched her inappropriately. Court documents show he bailed out of jail Friday and was ordered to report to a supervision program. Walter has been arrested at least 19 times in 10 years for similar crimes, but he hasn't stayed locked up for long because his crimes are considered misdemeanors. People in Washington are remembering the victims of a massive landslide north of Seattle that happened 6 years ago. 43 people were killed near the town of Oso in 2014.
The Daily Herald reports about 50 people gathered at the site this weekend to honor the victims. They're still raising money to build a permanent memorial. Oregon Ducks superstar Sabrina Ionescu has been voted the AP Women's Basketball Player of the Year. She was the unanimous choice, receiving all 30 votes. It's just the second time a player has gotten every first-place vote in the history of the award. In her senior year, Ionescu became the first player, male or female, to reach 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 1,000 assists in a college career. And that's in other news.
Okay, so Patty wants to know, hey Dan, does washing your clothes after you've been out kill the virus? Yes, if you're using hot water and leaving your clothes in the dryer for longer. A public health specialist says whenever possible, use the hot water setting as it helps kill the virus. Extra heat and time in the dryer, that makes sense too, as the droplets should dry out, which would likely inactivate the virus. Keep sending in those questions using the hashtag HeyDan.
Hi everyone, it's been a long week and I hope everyone's hanging in there. A lot of folks have lost their jobs, their sense of security, their companionship. People are feeling lonely. It's a tough time. And yet I was outside today and couldn't help but to notice others like me taking walks, doing yard work, being with loved ones, and just seeing people at a social distance. And it's something I hadn't seen in a long time. And it reminded me of a song that makes me think of making the best of a bad situation or just your outlook on life in general. And I want to share that song with you today. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing it. It's much worse.
We're getting a lot of pictures of people working at home. Beautiful setups. Guess I shouldn't be surprised how many dogs end up in these pictures. Malarizio says office managers Penny and June take casual Fridays very seriously, as do I. It is Monday, though. I'm waiting for Friday already. It's not just dogs, though. Lynn McFarland spent Saturday drinking coffee with Helen and Harriet. Thank you. And I think I'm most jealous of this setup. Michelle McManus from working at home is tough, she says. That is a sweet bar in the background. I'm a little jelly. But I have all I need, she says. Are you getting any work done at home? Keep sending us those workstations using the hashtag HeyDan. They told me I got time for 2 comments tonight. Jonathan Potter writing in saying, hey, Dan, maybe instead of reporting on how you're confused like the rest of us, you could put in the work and actually report some clarity. Well, we're trying really hard to do that second part. The first part, we're not dealing in black and white, as you probably know. And when we say that we understand things are confusing, we're telling you to be okay with that as much as you can, because we're working really hard to try and find the black and white where we can. Stick with us. I know this is hard. I know it's tough. We'll all get through it together, but trust me, we are working really hard for you. The second comment comes from Jack saying, my mom wants to know why your suit jacket is so small. Listen, all right? I'm either here or I'm at home. I'm not going to the gym. I'm stressed out. I'm eating a lot. Can you relate? That's my story. We got the rest of the story coming all week. Thanks for being with us. Have a good one.